Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm Gregg Bendian, and this is the ProgCast, where we get into some conversations about all forms of progressive music, all genres. Anybody that's trying to do something different, we're interested in it. And also taking a good look at some of the founding fathers of progressive music and progressive rock. And certainly that's something that's on the table today because I'm going to be speaking with David Duhig, guitarist from Jade Warrior.
Hello.
David, I want to give you a proper introduction and give people some context on Jade Warrior and what they meant to me and where they kind of resided in the spectrum of things around that time period.
Yeah.
Jade Warrior came onto my radar when they were signed to Island Records, and they did 4 albums.
I recognize them.
They did 4 albums. The 4 albums were Floating World, Waves, Kites, and Way of the Sun. And they came out respectively in 74, 75, 76, and then finally in 78. I was a huge fan already of knockdown, drag 'em out, epic prog masterpieces like Tales from Topographic Oceans and Relayer and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. So I saw Jade Warrior coming a mile away. I knew I wanted some of that for me. So I started getting into those records with headphones on, with the lights out, going through some very visual journeys. And a word about the style of Jade Warrior's music. It really is very early world fusion music. And it's a kind of fusion of a lot of different areas, which is particularly interesting because that is the sort of the peak of the fusion movement globally, if we're talking about people trying to bring together different styles. And in the case of Jade Warrior, you had world influences from Latin culture, from Japanese culture. You had
African,
absolutely, a lot of percussion. That was very attractive to me. But also ambient moments, jazz moments, pure rock moments, and soundtrack in a way, if you can think of those elements shifting and turning and taking you through a kind of musical journey. And that's what I loved about it. They were full-length concept albums, differing from what they did on Vertigo, but now in a fully instrumental music, featuring the flutes and percussion of John Field and the guitars of our man today's brother, Tony Duhig. So these were the 2 original conceptualists of the band. Am I right, David?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know when you want me to tell you from, but it's quite interesting how it really began with John and Tony way back, sort of like, I think Tony picked up a guitar sort of in the late 50s, I think. And one of the things that's made Jade Warrior a little bit unique, but not revolutionary so, but is when Tony got a guitar, he bought it mail order and his box arrives and it's a nylon string guitar. And he gets it out of the box and he hasn't got a clue how to tune it. He just this is his first intro into it. It's like, what do I do with it now? You know. So rather than trying to find out how to tune it, like the normal tuning everybody does or used to. I mean, these days people tune guitars all sorts of ways. It's normal, but back then, so Tony just tuned it to something he thought sounded nice, which was C major, open chord. I mean, it was talk about floppy strings, you know. I mean, I'll tell you in a bit about the audition I had to go to. I had to actually audition to my brother who'd been hearing me playing guitar for years, you know, and it was really for Tony's sake I did the audition, but I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so it started with Tony getting this nylon string guitar. He met up with John, and then they got a band together called Second Thoughts, which was based in a place called Ealing, which we used to live there. And Ealing had somewhere you might have heard of called the Ealing Club. It's sort of R&B and stuff. And I think, if not the first, one of the first gigs the Second Thoughts did was to support the Rolling Stones. You know, so that's how it kind of like started. And so anyway, they got this band together with a singer called Pat Lyons, who comes back into the story later, sort of a few years later, when all of Jade Warrior, including myself at that time, recorded an album with him. You know, he had a English band called Nirvana. It's before the American Nirvana was probably very, very tall, even, you know, down there somewhere, quite young kids probably. So that was the first thing, actually, first thing I did that I actually got paid for as a session. I remember going home on the train thinking, wow, I got 10 and 6 today, you know, sort of like, that's equivalent to about $1 back then, you know, sort of like, I couldn't believe it though, you know. So that went on for a while, and they got a really good following to such a degree they had their own fan club back then, you know, doing lots of the gigs like on the same bill with Clapton and people like that, you know. It's quite a tight-knit little thing back then, and a lot of it was based around West London, and then a big section of that was based around Ealing, because just down the road you had Marshall's making his amps, and you had the Ealing Club, and you had something called Ealing Town Hall, which is a great place to do gigs. I did a few there myself, and nice big hall, you know, it's good. So that went on for a while. I should point out that in Jade Warrior, I was much younger than anyone else in the band.
So what is the age difference between you and your brother?
Well, Tony's 11 years older than me.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that large.
John Field is 12 years older than me, or more. And I think Glenn and Alan are about 8 years older than me.
So in the years before Jade Warrior, you're gigging with them already.
Yeah, so I was going to Second Thoughts gigs, you know, and they'd be playing on the same bill as people like Pretty Things and people like that back then, you know. Some places I wasn't allowed into because I was too young.
What were some of the venues I'd love to hear?
I don't know. I don't know. I'll tell you, the strange thing about living in London in the 60s and stuff is you'd go to places you didn't know where they were.
Were there happenings and things, sort of loft spaces, parties?
I think the main thing that people really used to get close to that is if you was playing at college, because the gig would start about 8 o'clock in the evening and go through to about 3 or 4 in the morning, and they'd have like 6 or 7 different bands, and everybody's like out of it, having smokes and stuff. So it's real sort of laid back, you know, you could do whatever you wanted. And a few of the gigs they had it well sussed where they'd have 2 stages. So while one band was there doing their gig, the other one would be setting up. So like constant music, and it's worked great, you know.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So the next thing that really happened, like after Second Thoughts, I don't think they ever recorded anything at those sort of times. But yeah, Tony, John, and Tom Newman got a band together called the Tomcats. And
it should be said that Tom Newman goes on to be the engineer on Tubular Bells, correct?
Oh yeah, apparently co-produced it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so they decided to go off to Spain, and I remember just before they was actually driving off to go down to get the ferry and all that stuff. I mean, I'm a young kid at the time myself, compared to them, and they had hardly any money, and they all said, Dave, can you lend us 10 shillings? So me, I gave him 10 shillings to get petrol. Bizarre, totally bizarre, which I never got back.
I bet you didn't.
If I ever see Tom Newman again, I'll say that to him.
Okay,
you know.
yeah.
So they went to Spain, and that's a really big hit. They didn't put out singles, they put out EPs.
So what would an EP consist of?
4 tracks usually, I think, 2 tracks each side. Yeah. So I know they did at least 4 of those because my sister-in-law, Tony's wife, has got them, you know. So, and they went down really well. They got so big at one point, they was getting the police escorts to gigs, you know. So they had a really good time there in Spain, or successful time anyway.
And what years are we talking, David?
I think that's about 65 or 66, something like that. Maybe even early 67, but I think it's about 66-ish, I think.
And had Hendrix shown up yet?
No, he actually didn't arrive in England till September 66. You know, so he wasn't quite known, you know. A few weeks after that, though, he was very well known, you know. It's amazing. There's a really good interview with Brian Epstein, you know, the other day, and they was talking to him, and they said, he said, well, no, the Beatles weren't an overnight sensation. He says, you know, they really had to work really hard to get what they did. He said, you don't get overnight sensations. And then he said, hold on a minute, you do. He said, Jimi Hendrix, he was an overnight sensation, and he was, you know.
That's a great example of an overnight sensation.
He really did it, you know. Anyway,
did you get to see him early on?
No.
You were too young.
Well, not so much that, is that the places would either be sold out before you knew the tickets, or it's simply you'd say, I can't really make that, I'll go next time. Always thinking there would be a next time until he passed away, you know.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
So you guys were on the same circuit playing this similar clubs?
No, this was that was Tomcats.
Yeah.
So they came back from Spain, and then they, pretty much the same band, more or less, reinvented themselves as a band called July. And apparently, you know, what they call them, critics of the music from back then, put it up as a landmark psychedelic album, you know. It sells now on eBay for about $2,000, you know. Like, really become a genuine vinyl collector's piece, you know.
I'm fascinated by early psychedelic stuff and all the different flavors.
Yeah, I mean, Tony himself as a guitarist back then had several things that other people weren't really doing. He had a volume, and he used to play it in such a way with sort of finger style that it'd make it sound like it's almost backwards. You know, all the notes would feed in. And nobody was doing that. Nobody, with many people doing it since, to be honest, like he did. So yeah, quite a few things that were his own, you know.
Were there other sort of contemporaneous psychedelic British bands that you guys were interested in? What was Yesterday a band that you might be interested in, or anything from like My White Bicycle or things like that?
All right. Well, it's very difficult to say. We all like different things, you know.
What were you into?
Well, initially, because there's where we lived, called Ealing, it's next to Acton. And the first little part of my life, I lived in Acton, and our local band was The Who, you know.
Okay, cool.
So you'd go home, you'd go to school and stuff, and you'd all be talking about the Who single and stuff like that. and also into, I mean, there were so many good bands, sort of 66, 67, doing really interesting singles, you know, that like a lot of people look at singles and put them down, you know, and say, oh, those singles, the real music's on the album. But a lot of them put the real music on the singles, you know, as well. You know, so
It wasn't always album oriented. There was a singles situation that people would deal on, right?
yeah, I mean, look at Fleetwood Mac with Peter Green. The singles they did that on that early days, they all stand up on an album, you know, sort of. So I was into that, and Cream quite enjoyed until Hendrix came along, and still liked other people's tracks. You know, I didn't go completely sort of like facing the other way or something, you know. But it was Hendrix that really did it for me. Tony and John were more oldie worldy, you know.
So what
Like,
was the world music situation for them?
for who?
For John and Tony? What were they into checking out? Indian music?
That's what I was going to say. They really liked classical stuff, and I've come to really like classical stuff more than any other type of sort of style.
Could you elucidate on that, like specific classical guys?
Well, I've really got really fond of this British composer called Vaughan Williams.
Vaughan Williams is amazing.
Yeah, it does some beautiful drift. If Tony could write classical music and have guitars on it, it would have been something like that, I think.
Yeah.
You know, but Tony also introduced me to Bartok, and like Bartok string quartets, and they're really heavy. I mean, they're a bit like listening to Hendrix's solo on Machine Gun with a band of gypsies live, where several guitarists I've spoken to and stuff, they've all said, oh, how great it is, but none of them's mentioned the, I mean, I noticed this the first time I saw it. I thought, wow, that's really nice. What he's doing there is, it's a great solo Machine Gun, you know.
Oh, the Machine Gun solo. Yes, it's special.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the thing that's really, from a guitar player's point of view,
right,
is he does about 90% of that solo with his hand on the 12th fret and doesn't move it. He just goes down there for a sort of ding bong and then straight back up to the 12th fret and just stays there. You see, he's hardly moving his index finger. You know, I mean, he's moving it, but, you know, 12th fret. So it's, to me, it's a real lesson of all the notes are there in a really short little space, but you can just go on forever with variations and what could come out of it, you know.
What is he doing with his right hand at that moment?
Just,
whammy?
No, it's most of Machine Gun, when he's into the solo part of it, he's just plucking some notes. It's just plucking some notes, but it's the choice of notes he was doing that made it sound like, to people maybe that aren't guitar player, would probably imagine he's going all over the place doing this solo, but he's not. He's there just going like that, you know, and sort of.
That's fascinating.
He could probably talk to you while he was doing it, to be honest, you know? And drink a pint, yeah. So, yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to go through this chronologically and just got up to Tomcats and then to July, you know. They did do something pretty nifty, Tony, John and Tom with July. They was playing at the Albert Hall, and right in the middle of a number, there's a power cut. And so everything goes down and people are shouting out, drum solo. And they go, no. So anyway, the power eventually comes back on and they carry on playing from the exact note the power cut chopped them off, you know, which I thought that's a neat idea to do.
That's
you know.
brilliant, yeah. Could I ask, what kind of what sounds would we have heard? And am I right that John Field was pretty serious about playing percussion?
Oh, John was a very good percussionist. I mean, some of the gigs we did when we got into doing a bit of sort of jamming and stuff, which wasn't that often, it would take place in solos. And
So he was doing flute and percussion as a double on the gig.
yeah, and talking drum. Talking drum played a lot on, but he also played, and this used to freak people out, you know, like a little kitchen stool you'd sit on with no back, just a sort of little stool you'd sit on, about, you know, 2.5 foot high or something. He'd have one of those on stage, and he'd have 2 lumps of wood, 2x1 wood, and the people, especially the Americans, they was like, what's this guy doing with it? What's he going to do? You know? And he'd use that to bang this stool. And what a sound you got out of it. It was so percussive, you know. So that's a novel thing, you know.
So percussion was already a big part of the band previous to Jade Warrior.
I think it's really Jade Warrior. It took more so, you know, because yeah.
But John Field was doing it in the other band.
He had congas right from the rhythm and blues band. Yeah, he's a very good conga player. He's got to give him his due. He was very good at
the conga playing on those records is great.
Yeah, anything he took his hand to. Even done a bit of cello playing on, I think, the first album. He used to have a neat little thing. Can't remember what track it's on, but it changes. This track, Jade Warrior track, it builds, and then the flute changes into something sounding a bit Middle Eastern-y.
Yeah.
But what that actually is him putting the flute through a fuzz box.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, and it really sounded good, you know.
Well, the flute arranging is amazing on all the stuff. His flute choirs, the guitar choirs are great. You know, all of that writing is spiffing, and it's a pleasure to hear it. I mean, I realize that the early band was a different kind of situation, and that things flipped over to instrumental when they, you know, went to Island. But I also think the production value that happened at that point was so big. And I've been listening to this stuff recently and getting ready to speak with you and remembering what I loved about it. And it's just the production of that writing is so perfect for the writing. It's so beautiful in the sonic world and the worlds that it covers.
Yeah.
So John Field, great, you know, great. I think were they both really great arrangers?
Tony and John used to have this strange little thing they'd say, you know, like if they had something like that was really quite nice and it was just going on but just pleasant, they'd say, oh, well, that's 9 6 a yard, you know, meaning it's like we can do that for $10 a yard, you know, forever.
Right.
And they could, because I think they really knew the value of space in music, you know.
I sense the space in that music. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people get real shocks when it goes almost to the level that you think okay, it's got to fade out any second now. It'll be gone in a second, and they go boom, and you know, knock your head off. You know,
a lot of surprise in the music, and that's why I say a lot of scene changes. It's very visual to me, and the color changes are beautiful. A lot of thought put into percussion, but a lot of thought put into strings. Also, there's some great string writing. So, I would love to hear about how they were putting together that stuff. But don't let me interrupt you too long.
Yeah, because
so you're going to tell me how we get to Jade Warrior.
That's right. It's the next stage there's one little weirdness that happened in the middle, which is, I don't know why. You know, they did quite well with July. They went down well, and then that was it. Finished. Just one album and nothing else happened, which is very strange, you know. So then this thing came up with I think it might have been, you remember a pop band over here called Unit 4+2?
I don't.
No, it's a bit of a tacky band, but Tony just got the gig to play this thing, and I had a track called Concrete and Clay. But anyway, it's nothing really to write home about, you know. So that's where I think he met Glyn and Alan, you know. And then after that, another gig came up, which turned out to be a nightmare, which was this gig where they would go to Persia and with this guy who was heading the band, and they'd take go-go dancers with them as well. And they do this residency, and where they were staying, the hotel, was backed on to a prison yard. So they heard all of this like terrible stuff going on every night, you know. So yeah, and then Tony got this really bad leg, which forever after that, when he got pain in the leg, he'd say it's my Persian leg, you know. Yeah. So anyway, that sort of finished. They came back to England, and then it was, I think it was something like this, that Tony had a flat, and I was living there for a while when I was about 16 or 17, and then Glyn and Alan moved into another room there, and I got to know Glyn and Alan, and me and them used to jam in that room, sort of thing. Tony was in another room over there, and down the bottom of the hall was Tom Newman, you know. So it was quite a sort of like lot going on there, sort of thing.
But that's a great time of life when you can live in a musician house.
Yeah, indeed. You know, it's a one-off, you know, sort of thing.
It doesn't happen that often, but it was good when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point in the proceedings, my own musical thing started to happen. I'd done a couple of gigs with some friends, a sort of friends get-together band, and I used to swap the guitar for the bass, and the bass, the other guy used to swap guitar for the bass, so we take turns basically. And although I was a guitar player, it's like people went mad about the bass, you know, what I was doing, because we had this drummer who was, yet again, all of these guys are much older than I am, you know, in this other band called Black August. And there's a drummer, he's a bit of a flash drummer, double kit of drums, all that stuff, you know. And he used to have this thing where he'd do his drum solo, and, you know, and then at a certain point I'd come in and do the sort of bass solo on top. But because I could quite easily, one of the things I used to do before I heard Hendrix, but Hendrix used to do, and not an awful lot of other people did used to do, was these really up-tempo, very fast, very rhythmical, accented rhythms, but with a sort of dirty guitar sound, you know. So the energy coming from it was like, whoa, you know. So I could do that on the bass as well, quite naturally. So this flash drummer with his double kit drums, he'd do his drum solo, and then it'd be me, and we'd start off together, you know. Next thing you know, I'm going like this on the bass. And it really used to annoy the drummer because he used to top his drum solo, you know. And he's quite a lot older than me and bigger than me as well. So,
oh, no.
Yeah. So we had some good gigs. I think the most memorable one with them was playing a club called the Roundhouse over here. That's we did indulge in a few things before we went on stage, and to be honest, it wasn't until halfway through the gig I actually realised I was on stage. I'd been just staring up at all the sort of psychedelic lights on this great big domed, and I was just there like that, and then all of a sudden I sort of went, "Oh, I'm playing the bass." You know, sort of,
Wow.
yeah, but it's good gigs. And, we used to play marquees and colleges and all that stuff. And then started seeing more of Glyn and Alan, and Glyn was getting into King Crimson then, and this was before they had an album out.
68, 69?
Yeah, I think 69-ish. I don't know, beginning or end of, you know.
So tell me about that for a second. Did they come on the scene as a sort of what, or a kind of local band, supergroup? What are they considered in the local consciousness?
King Crimson.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. They you know.
Pre-album.
Yeah, they was getting an awful lot of interest, you know. Glyn was good at picking up things, so the first thing I heard of King Crimson was Glyn playing 21st Century Schizoid Man.
When the album was out?
No, before it. He picked it up from going to see the gigs.
Oh, playing it for you on the guitar?
Yeah, on the bass, yeah.
On the bass, wow.
And then me and Alan would jam along with that, you know. So that was good. And
that's fascinating.
So, yeah, so then there was this weird, what do you call it? You know, sort of interview, sort of audition thing that happened where Tony and John and Glyn were starting to write a few little tracks together, living in the same house, etc. They did do a cover version of I Talk to the Wind.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did that to play it to Ireland to say, well, you know, we can do this sort of quality of stuff and this type of stuff. Because Glyn had a very silky vocal voice back then. You know?
Well, isn't there a very crimson-y track on one of those first Jade Warrior records? It ends up on a lot of compilation discs. You know the track I'm talking about? It's the opening track on the record.
The Traveller?
What's the name?
The Traveller?
Is it The Traveller? Because it's just sort of like a very crimson kind of post Cadence and Cascade, or I talk to the wind kind of thing, and it has a long ride out sort of.
Yeah, it might be that, yeah.
Yeah. So I know what you mean. Yeah, I can see the connection.
Yeah, very rich tonally, Glyn's voice was, you know.
Did you guys get to see them?
No.
Oh.
No. Yeah, no, because I should point out that apart from being in bands for quite a few years, whenever I wasn't in the band, I was doing building work. You know, that story of digging trenches and all that business and knocking down houses and putting them up again. Sort of.
Yeah, working for a living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, working, yeah, and destroying your hands, but there you go. You know, no way around that one. So anyway, that sort of got to the stage of saying they wanted to get a band together, Jade Warrior. And so somebody said, well, you need to do a showcase gig, you know. So Tony said, do you think you'd be up to being in the band and playing the guitar, you know? Because they were very precise. I mean, I was just mad on the guitar, and they were totally precise. It was sort of like,
I see,
you know, heat and ice, you know, sort of.
Well, maybe they needed the different kinds of energy.
Yeah, maybe so, yeah. So prior to that, a few years before that, because this is where this comes in, this bit, is Tony was at home one day and I was sitting there and he was playing fingerstyle guitar. And this is when I was about 14, I think. Now I remember saying to him, "Hey, Tony, what is that? How do you do that?" You know. So he did this 4-finger thing, which was quite complicated. He could have started off with 2 fingers or 3, but no, he did this 4-finger thing. And I said, "Oh, can you show me how to do that?" So I started to do it, and I said, "How long do you think it would take me to get so that I can play it like you can play it?" And he said, "Oh, several months, you know, at least a couple of months, you know, hard practice, you know." And because I'd never done this before, and about 3 days later I saw him. I said, "Oh, well, I can do that thing that you showed me." And he was like, "What?" You know, so
can you give me an idea of the hand position, David? Show me.
Yeah, but your thumb, index finger, middle finger, and that finger, whatever that's called, the one next to the little finger.
Yeah.
Like it'd be one of these things where you go through.
Rolling it.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. But
Which
articulating, pulling off on each one?
yeah.
Not tapping.
And going, no, go backwards and forwards as well, So that made me actually, the first thing that actually made me think, I might be able to play the guitar, So anyway, that just becomes a little bit relevant when I say it came to the audition time, which, like I say, everybody found extremely strange that they all knew me. They'd all been playing with me and jamming with me, but they wanted me to audition, to play with them to help them get a deal via the showcase gig. Because it's definitely a 2-guitar thing,
Yes.
It live. So Tony put me through my paces, sort of. Quite weird. And then anyway, I left the room. Go out to the waiting room, please. And I came back in, and they said, yeah, I'd like to have you in the band, But it was Tony that was apparently most against it, I don't know if it's because I was his little brother, or that he was such a perfectionist. Even simple things, and they're sometimes the hardest to get perfectionist on, Plus, I think there was definitely a little bit of wow, my young brother's all of a sudden doing things I can't do, because I was, by that time putting a few notes together,
Yeah, you're spry.
Yeah, it was like, it was great though. It made me up my game, as it were, as a guitar player, but still knowing I'll be going back to doing building work next week, So we did 2 showcase gigs, as it were. The main one was at a place called Scots of St James in London, which I found out years later that was the place that Hendrix did his showcase gig as well. So I thought, oh, that's coincidence.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, and then we started. Well, no, actually, what happened then, Greg, is that Tony, John, and Glyn got the deal for Jade Warrior. I was like almost like a session guy at that time, really, So I went back to doing building work for a year and a half. Hardly heard much more of them. And then it came to doing the 3rd album. Although I was there on the 1st album, I even did a little bit of engineering for Tony, live things, and recording. But then next thing I know, it's time to sort of start thinking about doing the 3rd album, Last Autumn's Dream, which a lot of people sort of find that their favourite one.
Last Autumn's Dream.
Yeah.
What is the opening track on that one?
Blimey. I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah, that's a cool album. But that's the last of the Vertigos, right?
Well, not quite. There was another 2 recorded, but they never quite got mixed properly. And they have come out under different guises and different little labels.
This is Eclipse and the other one?
Fifth Element, I think it's called.
Fifth Element and Eclipse, yeah. I heard them recently in some vestige, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the studio, they sounded great. I mean, I remember there's one track, Disco something, it was called. I was doing
Disco Technique.
That's it, yeah. Because I should point out, I haven't got these albums anymore. I've lent them to people over the years, and I haven't got a single copy of anything, even Tom's album, so I don't have them. So it can be a long time between me hearing these tracks, And yeah, I remember doing that and did the solo on there. And John afterwards said that's the best guitar solo, electric guitar solo he's ever heard. And everybody gave him such a strange look, sort of, what are you saying,
There's some great guitar playing on that record, David. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some bits here and there, So then we started doing gigs, really.
So you got signed by Vertigo, and then when you did the next stuff, they dropped you.
Yeah, well, I think it was getting towards the end of the contract, and we started doing gigs, then started recording Last Autumn's Dream, and before Last Autumn's Dreams was finished, that's when we went to America and did our little American tour. Let
me ask you about that, because what is the lineup for the live band?
The same as the album, the 5 of us, you know. Did experiment in the UK with different musicians coming into it. Like one guy's a really nice guy. I think his name was Lindsay Cooper. I think his name was.
Oh, Lindsay Cooper, cool. Yeah,
double bass player.
Yeah.
And there's another guy. Can't remember his name. I think he's an Australian. He was playing sax, you know, and we did a few gigs with him. But it was really the 5 of us. Yeah, so it would have been 2 guitars, Glyn on vocals and bass, Alan on drums, and John doing everything else. You know.
Yeah. And is it a loud rocking band? Is it a dynamic band live?
It's very varied and very dynamic, and you sometimes hear a pin drop. You know, like how we used to start off the sets, and we always used to do this. Actually, was we had a gong there. John had a big gong, you know, but he wouldn't smash it like crazy at the beginning. He'd do it softly, and yeah. And then me and Tony would do this sort of technique that Tony found himself called scratch, where I never use a plectrum. I should point out I'm not a plectrum guitar player, but the only time I did use a plectrum was for doing scratch. So you'd have your guitar, you know, so say you're holding the guitar there and you've got a chord, then where the strings go over the bridge, you'd go across it really, really fast with the plectrum. And once you had a couple of guitars doing that, it sounded very string-like, and like there's a lot.
Oh, you mean very fast tremolos?
No. Your chord stays the same, but your picking hand or plucking hand would go really, really fast across the strings.
Oh, you mean to scratch the string?
Well, not actually scratch it. More, if that was your strings, they were like that. The plectrum would go across it like that way. Well, if that's your string, if this is your neck and that's your strings.
Oh, so it's a sort of it's exciting the string in a different way.
Yeah, and I tell you, through those nice big PAs, it used to sound really lovely, you know. So we'd do that, and I think from that we'd go into that track called The Traveller, which would be so soft and laid back and everything. People didn't quite know what was going on, really. You know, they'd heard a gong, they heard these weird things on a guitar, and then they get this soft track with Glyn singing silky vocals. That sort of, and then my highlight, I think, was a track called Petunia, which as John used to bang the stool like that. I was mentioning, and that used to be my sort of elongated solo, you know.
Did you do fuzz bass?
No, I was playing just guitar.
So you were just playing guitar, and that was your big solo?
Yeah, my biggest solo. Yeah.
So you never went to bass in the live band?
No.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. No, Glyn was the bass player all the time.
Okay, all the time. I didn't know that he always sang and played bass.
Yeah.
Right on.
So what'd I get to? So yeah, the live thing would be really varied, you know. And sometimes some of the dynamics from the albums might be there. You might go off to a really quiet part, you know, and then all of a sudden Alan would come in because he had a double kit.
So in that way, it was kind of spontaneous. It would change based upon a look or the way somebody felt like playing it?
No, it'd be all worked out. It would all be worked out. The only thing that was really, and any cues you might get was we'd just work out a little solo, for the end of the solo, me and Tony, little phrase, and that was like, oh, okay, I've done enough, sort of, yeah. So yeah, we used to go down well.
And so when Vertigo wasn't going to pick up and run with the band, and Stevie Winwood comes on the scene, can you tell me about that?
Yeah, well, Stevie Winwood completely, 100% got the deal for Ireland. He went to Chris Blackwell, who was the head of Ireland, and said, I really like these guys, they're really good. I think they'd make brilliant instrumental stuff. So anyway, next thing they go in to see Chris Blackwell, and like they does in the old days, got a cigarette packet and he writes down the deal on it, like they used to do. So that was another ball game entirely,
Let me put this in context for the listeners, because this is a really fascinating turning point in progressive music history, because what's going on in 1973 on the precipice of 1974 is Tubular Bells comes out on Virgin. Birds of Fire by Mahavishnu Orchestra comes out on Columbia and goes gold, instrumental album produced by the great Ken Scott. The Softs come out with 6 and 7. Brain Salad Surgery, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Tales from Topographic Oceans, Yes. No Pussyfooting, Fripp and Eno. Selling England by the Pound, Genesis. Lark's Tongues and Aspic, King Crimson. Overnight Sensation, Frank Zappa. In a Glass House, Gentle Giant. This is all happening. This is this moment where progressive music is popular music. This is this moment where you can get a deal on Island Records to produce trippy as fuck instrumental music and have at it, and people will go and listen to it. And it blows my mind that we're here talking about that, because I don't know if people can even picture that was the case, because it really did happen.
Yeah. I know. There's, like I say, a bit like in the 60s with the singles and stuff, like when it went into sort of what they now class as prog rock, it was like everywhere,
Everywhere. And Tubular Bells does so well that Winwood says, this is what you guys are going to do, or what's the change? Because now there's no more vocals, and it's going to go to this very interesting exotica approach. Tell me a little bit about that. Is that discussed? Is that something that just happens, or is there outside forces involved? Please.
I think an awful lot of, from what I know about Tony, for instance, he used to love like classical music, Nina Simone, Dionne Warwick, Wes Montgomery. Tony's octave playing was very much influenced by Wes Montgomery. But in a nutshell, film music, well, not necessarily music that sounds like music taken from a film, but that will give you that horizon,
Now, is this coming from Weather Report? Is this coming from any other contemporaneous instrumental units?
No, that's them.
So they're not checking out Weather Report. They're not checking out any American bands, anything like that.
No, in a nutshell. Yeah. It's like. Do
you know why I'm referencing them?
Sorry?
Do you know why I'm referencing Weather Report? Because they were bringing also exotica into fusion music right around that same time. Mm-hmm. Always with a lot of percussion and always with different ethnic areas of the world music put into one place. And you guys are just coming up with that on your own right around that same time. It's just very interesting.
Well, strangely enough, that kind of like
1974 is when the record's going to come out.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, Floating World.
Yeah. I should mention really that they were very knowledgeable, though, about things that you necessarily wouldn't think they would be. I'll give you a little example. I was in a recording studio called Nova Sound, and that's where he was doing Our Stalkman Stream, yeah. And working on a track called Dark River, I think it is. It's got quite a lot of drum things in it. And I popped out to get a sort of hot drink from the reception area in the studio where the security guard was. And he was having a lot of trouble from some bloke. And the guy's going, why are you doing this? Why is he doing this? Why are you doing that piece of music, you know? So anyway, I said, oh, John might be able to tell you more. So I called John out, and this guy said, why are you playing drums from so-and-so country and so-and-so village on your record? And John was blown completely backwards because this guy got it spot on. He actually knew the village of that drum sort of rhythm or whatever it was came from, you know. So we all got a bit sort of blown backwards by that. I remember it, you know.
Yeah, so they were checking out a lot of different stuff, and they were synthesizing a lot of things.
Yeah, but not necessarily other bands, you know.
No, not other bands, but other forms of music.
Oh yeah.
So what you're telling me is they're good to go when it comes to this moment to create these beautiful suites of instrumental music.
Yeah. I mean, I remember Tony taking me to the cinema one time. Well, he took me a few times actually, but to see Zulu. And he said, Dave, wait till you hear what they do with clapping the shields together and stuff like that, and the drums they do, you know. And that's why he went there, you know, not to see a load of people getting shot or anything, because it had like hundreds and hundreds of guys all going, chugga, 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 you know. Sort of,
yeah, wow. His ears were wide open.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So,
so tell me about being in the studio, creating those suites. Any recollections?
I can recall my guitar solos because.
Well, then I'll point you right to one that I'd love to hear you talk about, which is the Monkey Chant.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Basically, they said this was getting recorded in Island Studios in Chiswick, and which is West London again, you know. And so it's down there. I don't know really don't know what the engineer thought was going to happen, you know. But I did warn him. I did say, I'm going to be using a wah-wah, so I better give you a bit of a demo because the treble frequencies go right up when you put that on. He goes, oh, okay, you know. So Tony and John said, we're doing this track. We haven't done the backing track yet. And basically, Dave, just go in there and go nuts. That's what he used to call it, you know, just go nuts. You know?
Go nuts, okay.
And
it's a cool solo.
Yeah, it's there was plans for all of that, you know, to go a lot further. I mean, Chris Blackwell, unfortunately, I mean, good for him. He was getting into Bob Marley at the time. He just signed him around that time. But he went to Jamaica, leaving instructions to promote Monkey Chant because it's so unusual that he thought, and believe it or not, I've actually been to parties and people not knowing who I am, anything to do with it. And Monkey Chant's come on and they're all dancing to it, you know.
Monkey Chant comes on at parties. That's deep, man.
Yeah.
I say to our listeners, go out and find Monkey Chant by Jade Warrior. It's an incredible document of, is it Balinese chanting? What is the
I think it was actually. I think it might well have been.
A Balinese Monkey Chant, which also shows up on Sound Chaser by Yes, for you proggies out there, and also shows up on Hooked on a Feeling by B.J. Thomas. So this is an interesting thread throughout music of this Monkey Chant, and your take on it is incredible.
Yeah, it's what's the expression juxtaposed thing?
Yeah, it is. It's a juxtaposition. It's really great. It's an incredible energy moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Because those guys, you know, that chant is just so intense. It's like having a rhythm section behind the guitar.
Yeah. yeah, no, that's, and it still is. I think it's a unique track, to be honest. You know,
It stands as one of the most unique guitar solos I think in the history of rock music.
wow.
There you go.
Well, I tell you how mad the world is, Greg. I saw on some Facebook thing a couple of years ago, and some Jade Warrior sort of, you know, people that appreciate Jade Warrior sort of thing. And this guy is saying, all the way through law school, Monkey Chant was the track I listened to all the time. And I thought myself, wow, they got lawyers listening to Monkey Chant. No wonder the world's gone mad, you know.
That's mad in a good way.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I believe it. I mean, look, if it's on Island Records, they had to penetrate somehow, and people really related to it. It's a shame it didn't go further, but it's interesting because people apparently really, they got it.
Yeah. Well, it was meant to go further. Again, Chris Blackwell was going off to Jamaica, and him and some middleman, they'd organised a TV spectacular for Jade Warrior, and that was going to be a live in studio thing with several English musicians. Like, I know he's going to ask Fred Frith, actually, strange enough, to play there, and Steve Winwood to play, and maybe Mike Oldfield to play, but also with a choir, and also with strings and stuff, and a big percussion setup. So it was going to be a big deal. It really would have put Jade Warrior in front of people, you know.
So this was in order to sort of align it with a kind of Tubular Bells orchestral thing by Jade Warrior.
No.
A spectacle.
Yeah, it would have been a spectacle in as much as...
Right?
You've got choirs.
Musical expression.
Yeah. So that never happened neither, you know. I mean, that's where Ireland, if anything, let us down, would be Chris Blackwell would leave a message, do this with Jade Warrior, come back from Jamaica 6 or 9 months later, and it hadn't happened, you know. The same thing happened to me, because after the Ireland stuff, although you know, talk more about that if you like, but after that, Tony said, look, Dave, why don't I become your manager and, you know, get a band together and try to get a deal, you know. So he went to Steve Winwood's brother, who was working at Ireland, a guy called Muff Winwood, and he explained all about the Bartok string quartets and stuff, you know. And he said, what I want to do is always say my little brother, my little brother plays the guitar, you know, and want to do this thing with a bit like the guitar playing from Monkey Chant, but with a string quartet as well, you know, and then elaborate on that and, you know, do some other things as well. But that was the main selling point. And Muff Winwood was familiar with string quartet, believe it or not, and he was going to go for it, you know, he's going to go for it. And then all of a sudden, Muff Winwood gets a job in television, back because he was on television doing a music program. Then he went back to work for Ireland, and then he got offered to go back to the television. So that never happened either, you know.
That would have been cool.
Yeah. But anyway, since I'd got a band together, we started to look around to see where else might get a record deal from. And there's this label, Arista Records.
Yeah, Arista.
Big deal place, you know, sort of thing. So
Arista had, at that time, a lot of progressive rock acts.
Yeah,
like
well, the guy...
Greggs, yeah.
Yeah, the guy that who's in charge of Arista, this guy called... Clive Davis, that's him, yeah. So we went to see him and stuff, and prior to that, I think he was in Atlantic or something like that. Anyway, the label that used to have Mahavishnu, whoever they were.
Oh, Columbia.
Right. So, but then he came over here to do Arista, you know. So, fair dues, he gave me a good bit of money to support the band for like 3 months and go and do a bit of recording for a few days. And so what happened was the head A&R man said, oh, well, I'll come down and see your gig, you know, sort of.
Where?
Where was... That was at some place called Nashville in London, which later became a real sort of hive for punks when they came out, you know. And he said, I'm trying to bring the, what do you call it, the accountant. They all got chief accountants, a chief accountant, but he probably won't go. He don't go to gigs and stuff, you know. So anyway, we started off our set with me going nuts. I thought, rather than wait till the end of the show and the guitar player goes, all right, I'll do my bit now, I go, you know, all that stuff. I thought, let's have a big smash at the beginning. Everybody goes, oh, what's that? And then I'm off, you know, right at the beginning to catch them, you know.
Yeah.
So we did a few gigs actually, and punks loved it because they had some really up-tempo rhythm and stuff I talked about. We was doing one gig, open air gig, and sort of playing away doing this overhead smash, called it. Like tennis thing, overhead smash. Anyway, doing this rhythm thing, and I sort of looked behind me, and there's a whole bunch of punks back there all going really into it, you know. So I thought, oh, that's really interesting, you know. Yeah. So anyway, I should just mention that the A&R man, when we gave him the demos we did, he liked them so much he actually blew up his hi-fi. Every night after work and stuff, you know, he'd have a little sip of something or other and then belt this out really, really loud. So I ended up loving it. So when we went to see him after that gig, the Nashville, we said, well, what do you think of it? He goes, it's brilliant. I loved it. It was great. And what's his name, whoever the accountant was, loved it as well. And he never goes to gigs. He don't like music, really. And he was knocked out. So then we went to see this Clive Davis, who wasn't really sure. He wasn't sure on it, to take the chance on it, you know.
Based upon having scouted you, he still wasn't sure?
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
Yeah. I
so
think
what do you want?
When I go back, well, I know that's the question, isn't it? You know, when I think back on it now, I think if I'd got a really good vocalist in the band, because I was just guitar, not vocals, that would have probably swung it, you know, because we only did a couple of vocal numbers, the rest was instrumental, you know. And it was strange to that gig at the Nashville, because I started off with my Stratocaster, doing all this like fairly crazy Hendrixy type stuff, really, and then the big tremolo arm going, and then quickly take off the Strat and put on a twin neck guitar, so as I could do this next number on a you know, a 12 string, you know, which was influenced by John McLaughlin, you know, to go out and get one, you know, sort of thing. But yeah, it was yet another time we got to a situation where everybody was saying the right things until it comes to actually doing it, record company wise, you know. I mean, yeah.
So are there archives still to be discovered of Jade Warrior?
I'm not even sure, Greg, if we've got a rehearsal. I mean, it's so weird. We haven't. Somebody might have bootlegged us at a gig.
But Tony's widow doesn't have?
Well, there is a bunch of tapes over there, but a lot of them, you need a 24-track machine to play them on, you know.
Oh.
And there's not the type of thing you've got at home. I haven't got a 24-track.
Do you know what they might be then if they're 24-track? safeties of stuff from Waves or one of those albums?
I'm not exactly sure because Tony in particular was terrible for getting a 10.5 spool of tape and doing something on it and then writing something else on it, like Pavarotti singing so-and-so. It's a minefield to go through that stuff, you know.
I understand because I've dealt with archives that are marked well or not, and so I know what you mean. Yeah, that's a project.
Yeah, it is.
That's a big project. Hopefully that will happen, though. I know there are a lot of people that are interested, and it's so good to talk to you about all of these incredible musical events. And I tell everyone again, the 4 albums these are still available, right? As a compilation.
Not sure. They change it every few years. These things.
Yeah. You know? I mean, you can also. I know that this is on Spotify. For those of you that use Spotify, there's Jade Warrior music out there, and I encourage everyone to listen to it. David, what are you working on? Anything musical these days?
Yeah, well, there's a little project we did do, me, Glyn and Alan, and my friend, you've met Brian Imig, you know.
Oh, yes, a shout out to Brian Imig, who got David and I together. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Yeah, we did a little album called Dogs to Tar Poets.
Yes, and he sent me some tracks, and they were cool. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, so
tell me the status of that. Is that something that's going to be released?
Yeah, it was released. Yeah,
it was released,
and it's really hard to know how many it sold. Like all of these things, I don't know what anything sold. All I know is Tony, like me, would be amazed when he first look at YouTube and you see, oh, somebody's put a Jade Warrior track. Oh, it's had 20,000 listens. And then, oh, there's another track, 10,000 listens. There's another one, 15,000. Hundreds of thousands of people have listened to it on YouTube, you know, this Jade Warrior stuff. I think he would be more surprised than anyone that people are still listening to it and still want to hear it, you know.
It really presages a lot of music to come and a fusing together of a lot of different worlds, a lot of different sounds. And in that way, Jade Warrior is right on the money, right, you know, and ahead of the curve. And, you know, those records do stand the test of time.
Yeah, it's strange. You know, some records do, some do.
They're beautiful instrumental journeys. Each one is so unique. You know, the 4 elements, that aspect of it, kites being about wind and air, and the flute being so perfect for that sound world is just beautifully produced, very visual. Yeah, I'm so glad that those are available. So people should listen to them. And do you have any contact with the guys? Is John Field doing anything that you're aware of, sir?
Supposedly finishing off this new album, but it's the same one that the guy at Friends of Jade Warrior, it used to be called. Dave Platt used to run it. Very meticulous guy, and he came over to visit me and Glyn a few years back. It was nice to see him. I should mention one nice thing that happened.
Sure.
When we was doing this sort of American tour, you know, which was supposed to be 6 weeks, but our work permit took a little while to come through, so we spent all the time.
What year was that?
72.
Okay.
So I was 19, first time sort of in America, and it was like I couldn't believe palm trees, to be honest. I just couldn't believe it. I was saying, nah, they're not real. They're just stuck them in the middle of the road. Right at the end of tour, we basically went for like New York and Boston and New Jersey and Philadelphia area.
Headlining or double bills?
No, we was mainly supporting, but that's the thing I want to get to in Los Angeles because it's really nice. So we did quite a few gigs, but I was really looking forward to playing at the Whiskey Go Go, you know.
Sure.
It's very sort of famous place. Only place we played I heard of the name, you know. Yeah, we supported sometimes just one band, sometimes two or three, you know. All sorts of bands from, what's his name, Dave Mason band.
Dave Mason.
New York Dolls and Long John Baldry all at one gig sort of thing. Weird, you know. That's the night Glyn. You used to have to, don't know if you remember, there was a phase when you could have this tube thing that you could spin and go, woo.
Right.
So we're doing this gig with the New York Dolls, and he spins it, but before spinning it, he didn't check out to see how close I was. He went, crack, right there, you know. And I sort of went like this, and there was blood coming down there. He never said, you know. Yeah. But,
that's a Spinal Tap moment.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so this nice thing that happened was we was booked, I think, for 5 nights at Whiskey A Go Go. And we played the first night, and, you know, we was up there on the billboard, you know, with this band called Earthquake in sort of like taking up 2/3 of the space, and then Jade Warrior underneath taking up 1/3. We thought, well, that's only fair, we're supporting them, you know. So after the first night there, we heard this ruckus going on in the other change room, you know. And this guy, I guess he was a manager, he was a manager of Whiskey A Go Go, you know, sort of, to me, it was like Chicago Gangster. One of those sort of hats on, big cigar and stuff, and a walking stick. Wow. And he walks in and goes, I've got a bit of a problem. And we thought it was going to be about us, you know, in a bad way. And he says, the band Earthquake, they reckon that you lot are so good, you should be top of the bill. And, you know, we said, but I can't do that. He says, you know, because of contracts and all that, you know, they're contracted to be top of the bill at the Whiskey, blah, blah, blah. He said, I'll see what I can sort out, you know. So next day he turned up, me and Glyn turn up, then we look up, and also it's got Earthquake, and then the same size is Jade Warrior. So the band actually did that, you know, off their own back, which is really nice of them, you know.
That's respect.
Yeah. So actually, the whiskey was the best part of the tour for me, because I'm not sure if it's the second or third night. I think it might have been the third night. Playing away on stage, you know, and they got a stage, and at the side they've got big screens that they project slides on, you know.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't aware of, you know, for a while. And yeah, so I'm playing away, and sitting right in front of me, the table right in front of me, you couldn't miss him, was Edgar Winter, you know. And I thought, oh, that's Edgar Winter, you know, sort of like, he's famous. So the next gig, the next night there, sitting at the same table, but with his brother Johnny Winter as well, they're both sitting there watching. And yeah, the night before that, that's right, the night before that, Glyn said to me, I said, Glyn, did you see they were showing Hendrix posters at the side of this stage? He goes, yeah, they've been doing that all week, Dave. I said, have they? He goes, oh, no, I've been missing them. He goes, well, every time he did a guitar solo, they put Hendrix up there, you know. So the next night when Johnny Winter's there and Edgar Winter's there, Johnny Winter having played with Hendrix a lot, they were really good friends. And I went forward, I could see Hendrix there, and I spent the rest of the gig looking at the slides. It's just the way it was, but it's a nice memory of Whiskey A Go Go, you know.
Where did you play in New York? Do you remember what that venue would have been?
Is there a place there called the Ritz?
The Ritz, yes.
Yeah, that's the only place I remember name-wise.
The Ritz in '72?
Yeah.
And do you say you played in New Jersey?
I think we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the other bills?
Black Oak, Arkansas, is that?
Oh, Black Oak, okay.
I think we played with them there, and but no, because quite often you play with maybe 2 or 3 bands in a night. So
Any bands that impressed you when you were touring? Did you ever hear other bands?
not really.
Hang out with any of them?
No, we
Ships
were
in the
like,
night, huh?
yeah, it was kept ourselves to ourselves, really. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot to just keep it together and have your band on the road.
yeah. I mean,
So it wasn't partying 24/7 for you guys.
no, not at all. We'd
Was
go
there
out
a lot of gear?
we had a stack each, basically.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Was it loud on stage?
No, not overly. I mean, we found that the Americans had it so well sussed that you'd turn up to do a gig, and if it was a bigger gig, you just reverse the truck virtually onto the stage and get all the stuff. Well, we wouldn't, we had a few roadies, but roadies would just get it out. I mean, other little places, sort of like Marquee or somewhere like that, you're lucky if you could get the truck close to the
Right.
the exit even.
Hmm.
But there's one thing I do. I just wish things had happened 2 weeks later. In as much as about 5 years ago, I was looking at the website that told you what bands have played at the Whiskey Go Go, and it's probably made by them, I don't know. And if we'd played there 2 weeks later, we'd have been supporting Mahavishnu Orchestra. And I'd have loved that, I'd have loved that,
Mahavishnu Orchestra, Jade Warrior double bill would have been pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah, different, I mean, most guitar bands would be going, or drummer bands even, would be going, no. But
nobody has a problem with guitars in 1972. More guitar the merrier.
Yeah.
And the double necks abound.
They did, yeah, they did. I didn't have that back then,
Yeah.
I just had my Stratocaster, which was quite funny. I'll just tell you that, is that I'd always wanted a Stratocaster, but all I could afford was cheap copy guitars. And then we were in some studio that had a rehearsal space in the complex. And, I think it was Tony or someone said, "Okay, Dave, today's the day we go and get your Strat," really, I can't. So we go off and I picked out my Stratocaster. I was over the moon, so I got back and I said, "I think you guys maybe need to all leave the room. It's going to be loud." So I had a high watt 100-watt amp and 2412, so turn that up considerably. Started playing a Stratocaster and the whole room was shaking, And next thing I know, there's kerfuffle banging on the door and everything, And so, I just heard Tony said, "Yeah, okay, I'll tell him." And he says, "Dave, Manfred Mann's trying to record in the other room and they're picking up your guitar. Can you turn it down a bit?"
So much for soundproofing.
Yeah.
You can't soundproof for vibration, I don't think.
No, especially when you do tremolo arm on a guitar. If you do the bass notes, it goes really, really low. Yeah.
So do you still have that instrument?
Yeah.
Can we see it? Is it nearby?
Yeah, it's actually.
Oh, look at that.
Getting a bit worn now,
It's well worn and well played. Yeah, look at that. What year is that?
63.
63. Beautiful. David, you said you had an interesting Fred Frith anecdote from Jade Warrior?
It's from actually when I was doing Tom Newman's album. I just done one guitar solo, which I really liked actually. It was right up my street. And then there was this funny sort of rock and rolly track almost. And someone said to me, "Oh, do you want to do a solo over that, Dave, and do something in the background and everything?" And I don't know what came over me, but as soon as I started doing this guitar, my brain went to it being a 1920s or 30s funny little jazzy type band, and that my second string on my guitar was a clarinet. So I played this solo as if I was playing like a clarinet. And anyway, we done it, and they all said, "Yeah, great, great," you know. Fred Frith came down and goes, "Wow, David, that's really unusual phrasing. Coming from Fred Frith, that was like, well, if he thinks it's unusual, it must be really odd, you know." But it's good little memory of that, you know.
And he played violin on Waves, did he not?
Apparently so, yeah. I think Joey O'Donnell somewhere was on something, but I don't know which of the albums, you know.
Yeah. It's an interesting intersection of people there. And yeah, we had Fred on the program recently, and
John was co-producing that, strangely enough.
Oh, cool.
I think that's to free up Tom a bit, to not have to think about every single little thing. Is it right? Is it wrong? Should I this? Should I that? Having somebody
What is it called?
Fine Old Tom. On Virgin Records, as it was originally. He did get in touch not long ago saying he's going to do another Fine Old Tom, and he said, "I need you on it," you know, so might hear from him. I don't know. I think he works on Glastonbury time, because I live in Glastonbury here. And it's like, if in Glastonbury you say to somebody, "I'll see you later," that means maybe tomorrow or the day after. If you say, I'll see you in a few days' time," it means next week. And if you say, "I'll see you next week," it means next month. And if you say, "I'll see you next month," it's next year. And if somebody says, "I'll see you next year," it never happens.
Wow.
Everything exaggerated. Time is so strange here, you know.
Now, isn't Glastonbury an interesting archaeological area?
Yeah. It's got the Abbey here and stuff like that. And it's got the tour, and it's lots of interesting little places.
Well, aren't there sort of monuments or prehistoric ruins in that area?
The main ruins is the Abbey, which is supposedly supposed to go back to before the time of Joseph of Arimathea.
Oh, okay.
Who was he dealt in copper and stuff, so he used to go over to Cornwall to do his deals, but he used to come to Glastonbury, and legend has it that he brought Jesus here as a young boy.
Wow.
Mm.
And aren't there like ley lines going through that area and energy centers and things?
Yeah. I mean, when I first moved here, for the first 12 years, I lived almost at the bottom of the Glastonbury Tor, you know, and there was several ley lines passed just through our house. But loads going everywhere, and tunnel systems, loads of tunnel systems, you know.
Wow. Yeah, can you tell me about like any experiences you had in those areas? Any weird things that went down?
Well, one night, me and a couple of friends, a guy called Lufus, he said, "Oh, I could get you in the Abbey at night. I know how to get over the wall where there's an angle."
Wow.
So
Okay.
we got over there, and we're down there in a little crypt, which is the special place in there. And all of a sudden we hear these footsteps. And I joke, these footsteps sounded like it was somebody that was about 12 foot tall. It sounded like a giant, you know. And my friend Leafus is 6'6" anyway, you know, so it sounded like, you know. So we scarpered from there, you know, but yeah.
Did you bailed out at that point?
Sorry?
Did you just run out at that
point?
Yeah,
we didn't want to look back. It was really, really worrying, you know. But there's lots of stuff happens in Glastonbury because, you know, as they say, certain times, you know, equinoxes, solstices, the veils between what's just above us and us gets very, very thin. It actually does get very thin. So all sorts of stuff is possible at those times, you know.
And people are gathering there around that time, right?
Yeah. I'm one of them.
And so tell me about that. I'd love to know about that.
Well, that's kind of like quite a deep subject. It's to do with a group of people called the Essenes. I don't know if you're familiar with that word at all.
No, tell me what that is.
The Essenes are basically at the Dead Sea.
Okay.
In the Dead Sea, there's a community of people that gave up living inside and going by all the rules and set up their own settlement for spiritual development.
Where?
On the Dead Sea. Yeah. Well, okay. they had a few places, you know. Qumran is one of the most well known, and it's reported that, again, when Jesus was a boy and there's all these missing years, that he was actually went to be part of that sort of commune, really, basically, you know. But it was a very spiritual sort of group, you know. It wasn't just let's all be vegetarian and hang about, you know. It's like they were really strict, you know, in what they taught. And apparently they say Jesus and John the Baptist were both there and knew each other well before it came to Jesus being baptized by John. And there's also cousins as well. So it's all a tightly knit little thing going on, you know, sort of thing. And
isn't that also related to the Arthur mythos?
Glastonbury is, yeah. So anyway, there's basically a bunch of those over here, you know, and I've been sort of with them for 35 years now, you know.
And didn't we just have an event that signified spring?
Yeah, that was on the 21st, yeah. There was a bigger event that was happening, I think it might be in June last year, on the 21st, where our galaxy started moving into what they believe is the centre of the universe. Like, as much as they can put a centre on where they believe it started.
And what is that called?
The Grand Alignment, I think it was called.
Grand Alignment.
Because planets as well. There's the planets doing something special, and our solar system as well. You know, so these things quite often, you know, when people say, "Oh yeah, 19th of so and so, blah blah blah," this is going to happen. It could be quite a while before what you think is going to happen or might happen for it to filter down and stuff, you know. It's not necessarily bang and everything changes, you know.
You know who else was really into ley lines and this connection was Steve Hillage. Do you know Steve Hillage?
Yeah, I met him once a long time ago, you know. I met a lot of these guys once, you know.
Now, it's interesting because I know that that influenced his music quite a bit.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
He was very interested in UFOs and
well, I've got too interested in UFOs. You know, outside of my music world, just before Tony passed away, he did an interview because we were going to do a radio show, you know, and yeah, we interviewed this guy anyway in the studio we had. Called Colin Andrews, all about prop circles. And he was telling us some pretty fascinating stuff. Then, unfortunately, Tony passed away. And I thought, wow, this guy Colin Andrews is really interesting. So I got in touch and I managed to get a few bob together, some money rather, and financed doing a crop circle video to BBC standards, you know. And
How did you do that?
I started a company and put out shares, or people wanted to invest, and they did. This sort of came together in it's a weird but very synchronous way. Very odd that was. So that started me off on this path, which was basically make your own video, try and sell it, to discover there's no specialist distributors for that sort of stuff in Europe or England. There was no distributor for that sort of material, like we wanted to get it out there, you know, in a big way. So anyway, I got involved with this company in America, and the next thing you know, almost blinked, and we are the biggest distributor in Europe of these videos. And then,
How did you make these videos, David?
well, the first one was a proper, you know, proper cameraman and all that. I did the sound recording, and I sort of produced it, although I didn't want to make a big thing of that, you know. But yeah, so I did first.
What are we seeing in these videos?
Crop circles and what they mean to people and what they meant to ancient people.
But you're not. Are you creating them or finding them?
Oh, you get told, you know, there's a whole network of people out there for the crop circles.
Is it pretty frequent that this goes on, that they're showing up all around the country?
Yeah, especially back then, in 93, 94. Well, the reason, you see, I wasn't completely nuts is when I spoke to Colin Andrews about doing a video, he said, well, you know my book, because his book, I can't remember what it was called now, but it's all crop circles with little bits of info, was put on that Queen Mother's reading list for Christmas. So there's big publicity, you know, and
I think there's public interest in that. Do you think it's, what do you think it is?
I think there are quite a few of them that are hoaxed. But I mean, I know some of those hoaxer guys, you know, and they're not doing all these things that they're saying.
So what's unexplainable? What's unexplainable?
The speed at which a farmer can go out with his dog at night, because we spoke to plenty of farmers and filmed him. He could go out to just check his field before he goes off to bed, like, make sure everything's all right. And then he'd be walking towards going back to home, and he'd hear sort of a crackling sound, and that would be the seeds and stuff within the crops, you know, as corn, barley, would be cracking, and he'd turn around and have a look, and there'd be this like 300-foot long crop circle.
So it's fairly instantaneous in his account.
Yeah, in most people's account.
So there are multiple accounts of the same, hearing the sound, turning around?
Yeah, farmers, any farmers that get real ones are always, that's the thing they say, you know, we're amazed how quickly this thing appeared. And they're big, these things, you know, because filming it, was out there doing it, you know, it's filming it and stuff and interviewing all these people. And yeah, so...
Let me ask you this, though, David. In that world, is there some sort of available kickback for a farmer to have a circle where you come in and film it? Is there sort of an indicator there?
No, nobody.
So there's no benefit to it. It's not a sculpt. It's not a performance art. It's not an artist.
You'd make more money out of it by charging £1 or $1 a go to walk into the field and look at it.
And do people do that?
They used to in the old days, yeah. Because it was sort of something that just landed all of a sudden, and it was everywhere. Yeah.
Wild, man. That's fascinating. So you did like hundreds of those?
I know, we did just the one video.
Oh, okay. So, but there's a market for it. In other words, that it's constantly going.
Yeah. I did the soundtrack for the video as well, which I quite enjoyed. You know.
Where can we see that?
I don't know where. where you might be able to find a second-hand copy on somewhere, you know.
You should get it up on YouTube. I think that would be fun.
Yeah. So just moving very quickly, otherwise I'll bore you, is that so started importing these other videos from mainly from America and stuff, and some other local ones. Then
Is there a big phenomenon in America for it as well?
I think all of it used to be in the past, you know, in the 90s, you know.
In the Midwest or the field? Where in America would that stuff be?
I don't know. I remember there was somewhere Laguna in California. Is that
in California? There were crop circles.
Somewhere called Laguna something, or it might have. It might not have been necessarily crops, because apparently these even would come up in different things. There's even snow circles at one point, you know.
Oh, that's interesting. And could there so formations basically that would pop up?
Yeah, very quickly. Yeah. So I moved from there to, like I say, how am I going to sell this video? To finding I could sell loads of other people's videos as well, and got a whole bunch of stuff on the go, and that was going really well. And I thought, there's a few magazines we were advertising in that aren't covering the stories that we consider to be big, you know, and the advertising rates kept going up quite quickly, you know. And I thought, this ain't on, you know. So I thought, like, I'll start my own magazine. So I started this magazine called UFO Reality, and it went around the world. You know, Barnes and Nobles and stuff, with W.H. Smiths and stuff here in the UK and in Australia and in Japan.
I've seen them in Barnes and Noble. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so that was all going really well. So I thought might as well sell a few books while we're doing it as well on these subjects, and that's another whole world, because you get into ancient archaeology and stuff like that, you know. So we did that for a while. The magazine, it was like full colour, you know. It's proper. Wasn't a little newsletter. It was a proper glossy magazine. And then all of a sudden one day, I went up to go to bed, flicked on the light, and then just collapsed on the bed with full-blown sort of double pneumonia, and turned out I caught tuberculosis, you know. So that all of a sudden went dead stop. You know, it was terrible. So I had medication for that, which was a bit like chemotherapy, for nearly a year. And at the end of it, they said, "You're all right now, yeah, you can go home and stuff." And about 3 weeks later, it came back even worse. And I said, "Does this mean I'm going to die then?" He said, "Well, we think it could be drug-resistant TB, so in which case you will die, you know." So, I mean, I had weird out-of-body experiences in the hospital, you know, and stuff like that. But it didn't freak me out. I sort of like half doing that anyway, with doing meditations and stuff, you know.
Oh, so you've had out-of-body stuff with meditation?
Yeah.
Where did you go?
Oh dear. Well, I can only tell you a certain amount of this stuff, because a lot of it is
whatever you want. I'm just curious.
Well, quite often there's a process I've got for my meditation, you know, and at the end of it, I'd quite often find myself a place in Sedona, actually. That was the weird. Yeah, I must tell you about Sedona, because like for a number of years, my meditation involved getting to a certain place and establishing yourself there, and it was like a rock face that was quite steep and very high, and I would just dive off that rock face, and it would always take me into something, you know. And I could find myself inside the body of an American Indian, you know.
Really?
Yeah. But
And you're aware of the surroundings of this other person.
totally. I mean, the other day even I was doing some meditations with some friends, and it was sort of suggested, it's like guided meditation, to go to a certain place we all go to. And I was so much there, I couldn't believe I was actually meditating. I'm not meditating, I'm actually here, you know. This is, everything was there, you know. What it looked like, what it smelt like, the temperature.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. We've got an amazing amount of possibilities up there, you know.
How do you interact with people when you're in that situation?
What, up there, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've learned that you can, what you actually feel dictates what happens. But because I've done it so many times now, I'm in a good space when I'm there, you know, not freaked out or anything like that. And I've learned that it's okay to ask questions when you're in that state. And it's quite interesting, you know. I mean, I like to know who people are. Like if I meet somebody out there, I'll say, who are you? You know, what's your name? What do you do?
Is that what you do?
Yeah,
And so what do they say to you?
they tell me. They tell me what they do, why they do it.
And this is always in English, and this is always in different
No,
places?
no. Yeah, it's always in different places. Well, no, a few places you can go back to 2 or 3 times over a few decades, you know. But it's not always same place. And I have heard things in other languages that I've not understood the language. You know, it's simple as that. I just
So you don't speak the language necessarily that you're in the area of.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And so do you ever look at yourself and see what you are in a mirror when you're in that situation? Do you
Well,
have a sense of where you are as in the body?
uh, where your physical body is sort of what I call parked.
It's
So
what?
parked. You park your car.
Oh, it's parked.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of stages to it, but the second stage, once you get beyond this second stage, I found anyway, you've really gone way beyond. You know, it's almost like saying you've gone beyond this universe almost. You know, it's
So you can't go too far. It's never dangerous.
well, you know that strange saying, you know, that in The Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker is going down the thing, and you know, and he says, "What's down there?" And he goes, "Only what you take with you." You know, so it's kind of like not having fear. You know, not being careless, but
You're kind of
remaining sort of
neutral.
being sensitive. Yeah. I'm not going to any of these things to do any harm or anything that would be problem for anyone else there. You know.
Do you experience flight?
Yeah, occasionally, but not all that often now. You know, it's more when I go into the meditation, doing the meditation thing. It's like you know you're going there with a purpose, and the purpose is to see what happens and what's maybe given to you or what you can learn, you know, or realize or something, you know.
How long have you been doing that?
The 60s, yeah, back in the 60s, yeah.
For 50 years you've been doing it? More?
Yeah, well, I can't believe I'm 69, you know. It's unbelievable time, I tell you. but yeah, there's a whole world of exploration there, and it costs nothing. You know, it's kind of like free. You just got have a bit of. It's like I read the Carlos Castaneda books, you know,
Sure.
and there was one in one of the books where Don Juan says to Carlos Castaneda, like, I think Carlos is saying, how do I maintain this sort of when I find myself in a dream? And, you know, and Don Juan says, well, when you find you're in a dream, look at your hand. And then when that starts to fade a bit, look at the horizon. And then when that fades a bit, look at your hand again. And keep doing that, and that will get you established there. And so Carlos Castaneda said, I finally got it. It took me a year, you know. Well, I started doing that when I read the book, and it took me 5 days. To such a degree, I look at my hand and I think, this is completely boring. Just the hand was so solidly there, you know. So I think I've got a natural talent for this stuff.
It sounds like you do.
Yeah. It translates.
Fascinating. The mind fascinates me.
Yeah.
Wow. And not a surprise too that you're on a musical vibrational level with that. And I always thought it was interesting that your brother and formed a band that was then having cosmic concepts or elemental concepts, or what that was tying into also that moment in the 70s where it was would later become, I think it was not known, and maybe you can refute that, as the New Age, but I think New Age became sort of a coined term after that.
Yeah, I guess so.
But you guys were already into that, and then I think that comes into the music in a really fascinating way.
Yeah, I suppose I should mention as well, when you think of Tony and John's music, and I mention them more so than Glyn, because Glyn was really a songwriter, whereas they were musicians, basically. You'd be forgiven. Some people, you could forgive some people for hearing Jade Warrior music. Like, God, they must be out of their brains. What are they smoking or whatever, But Tony and John never did. They totally not into drugs. They didn't mind if I had a smoke outside, or anyone else. But they weren't into drugs, and there's hardly into drinking at all. So they're very sort of.
That's interesting.
Yeah, well, you'd think I was out my brains doing Monkey Chant, but no, I'd never smoke in the studio with them or outside the studio with them.
Oh, no, I never assume. In fact, I'm always interested in whether people were or weren't under the influence or what the influence was. I mean, certain music that gets played really, really fast at a certain time period, you do tend to wonder what substances were involved. But, certain people singing very sharp at a certain time in music, and you're wondering what they might have been dealing with. But other than that, no, it's interesting because Steve Hillage comes to mind as someone who was a serious meditator. Maybe he still is, but I remember at that time when he was working with Todd Rundgren and Todd Rundgren's band Utopia in Woodstock, that the guys in the band said, they really are meditating. They really are trying to deal with vibrational planes and astral traveling, and seriously dealing with that. And so I find that fascinating. I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, maybe just one last thing to mention.
Please.
What music I like. In as much as, apart from classical stuff and that, I can listen to that all the time, really, is Jimi Hendrix, followed closely by Joni Mitchell, followed closely by Kate Bush, followed by Mahavishnu Orchestra, and probably the Beatles, because they've been on TV so much lately, all the tracks are back in my head. But they're the main four anyway. Hendrix, Joni Mitchell, Kate Bush.
Did you know that I had a Mahavishnu repertoire project?
I had to check it out because I thought who is this guy, Greg? You know, so I had a look. I didn't know that. I went to some page and there's loads of albums there, and that's all you on them.
Yes.
Wow.
And so I'm with you in terms of Mahavishnu love. I spent about 12 years with a bunch of different configurations playing that music of John McLaughlin and all the different albums except for Apocalypse, although I did an arrangement of Smile of the Beyond. But so that music, I'm with you 100%. And
I was so pleased when they came out, you know, because like when
man.
Hendrix went, and then all of a sudden all this stuff like disco and all this stuff or whatever came in, and thought, what on earth's going on? And strange enough, I don't know if you know this happened here in the UK. I was popping around my friend's house, and we used to listen to Radio Caroline, and this was actually Radio Luxembourg. And he said, Dave, because he was a guitar player, he said, Dave, they just played a track, and I've never heard anything like it, and it's called Awakening. So anyway, the disc jockey comes back on, you know, and he says, we've had so many phone calls from people saying we're playing the record at the wrong speed. I'm going to play it again, double check it's at the right speed, and see what you think of it. And he played it again, and so it's the first time I heard it. I went, you know, let alone
it's
Billy
not
Cobham.
for the faint of heart. We tackled that one on many occasions, and it was always disputed whether somebody's played it too fast or not, because everybody had to try to keep up with the person that was trying to play it too fast, and you shouldn't do that.
and like most bands, they played it faster live as well, you know. So.
Yeah. And didn't you have a very interesting interaction with the percussionist Frank Perry?
Yeah. So I saw Frank many years before he came in the studio, you know. And yeah, I don't know if you probably know, but not everybody will know, is Frank used to surround himself in a great big cage, you know, sort of scaffold pole type cage with all sorts of bells and gongs and singing bowls and everything like that. And
and he was mentioned on Alex Kline's interview on this program because he was a big influence on my friend Alex Cline, the way Jamie Muir was an influence on me, and all of the ringing bell tones. And Frank Perry, we should tell people, was in Overy Lodge with Keith Tippett. And so he was in other improv groups as well. But please go ahead about Frank Perry.
Yeah, well, Frank came in the studio. When Tony and I moved from London, we moved to Glastonbury and got a studio together, like a commercial studio. And we were all asked to do a sort of music to a guided meditation. And I did one about Tibet. John did one about King Arthur. I can't remember what Tony's one was. That was about crystals, I think. And Frank Perry was doing one with his wife doing the voiceovers, you know. Wow, it was an absolute epic. I mean, it's such a, I think we recorded it, you know, for about 10 hours.
Straight?
More or less. He was a real worker. I don't remember us having, I had to go home because I fell asleep with my hand on the tape locator. You know, I sort of like so tired, you know. Tony stayed there and made it through the night, you know, but...
just long tones?
All sorts, actually. I think he went through everything, but he was a purist, you know. He'd bang a gong and that'd be enough for 3 minutes or whatever, you know. So,
with spoken meditations?
Yeah, no, the spoken meditation was put on afterwards, I think.
Pardon?
Was.
What was that?
I think the spoken meditation was put on afterwards.
Put on afterwards, thank you.
By his wife, who knew exactly how Frank would like it, you know. So yeah, that was
a series of meditation tapes?
Yeah, one from each of us, the 4 of us, yeah.
You remember the company?
Yeah, it was a company that Tony formed with a guy downstairs from the studio who did essential oils. And they decided to have a nice lotus flower china thing that and they put a candle there for, you know, in the box. The incense, essential oil, and a CD, a cassette rather. You know, this was back in the early
Cassettes, yeah.
Yeah, so they did really well with them as well. You know, people loved them.
I'm going to see if my buddy Alex Cline has his. I'm pretty sure he would have it. I'm going to ask him about that. And if we can, we're going to try to locate it. Do you know where do you have your copy? No. But do you have the copy of the one you did?
If I have, it's in I've got actually 400 cassettes of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's in them multiple of boxes, you know. But just finish with about Frank. I mean, Frank's a lovely guy. You know, I spoke to him quite a few times after he did the recording and stuff, you know, and saw him when he came down. But I walked in the studio once, and sitting there in the reception room was Tony, my brother, and Frank, you know, and they was nattering away, and Frank said, "Oh, I said, I'm really better be off," you know. So I said, "Oh, you know, have a good talk," because they both seemed in really good spirits. And Tony said, "Yeah, quite fascinating." Frank was telling me all about this composer and how his theories on making music and stuff. Like, I really, you know, thought I'd like to meet this guy, you know. So he said to Frank, "Frank, can you get it so I can meet this guy?" You know, and he goes, "No, Tony, it'd be a bit hard. He died 400 years ago." Yeah. Another friend of mine who was in some of the indie type bands, you know, this is many years ago. They were playing at a festival, and they'd been on, and I think a real heavy metal band was about to come on. So the energy of all the audience at this festival, like, you know, and my friend Rupert said to Frank, "Oh, you're going to have trouble for, you know, calming that lot down, you know." And Frank goes, No. He goes, "I've got just the right bowl," and pulls out his singing bowl, goes up to the mic and starts going, and everyone went quiet. Completely.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he knows his stuff. He like recognises bowls from past lives and stuff. Frank does.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
So this was at a punk festival. He started the ball.
I don't know if it was a punk festival. I think it was a mixed up, you know, a bit of this and a bit of that. But the heavy metal band that's just about to come on, everybody's really excited about it. You know, the audience. You know, sort of like, yeah. And Frank just leveled it all out. You know.
That's a great Frank Perry story. Thank you. And you mentioned Kate Bush and Joni Mitchell. I'm so glad, because they are just so special. And I don't think you can have one without the other.
No,
you know?
I tell you what delighted me, Greg. I found out, because I had a Hendrix page on Facebook, but I don't really do Facebook much at all now. It's called Jimi Hendrix Miles and Smiles, and it's just really nice photos. Always ended up, the last few I'd post would be him smiling, you know. And they got about 18,000 followers on there, you know. And I didn't go on Facebook for ages. When I went back, it had all gone, so I thought, I'm not going to put it all up again, you know. But one thing I found out there from a little interview about 2 or 3 minutes long with Joni Mitchell talking about Jimi Hendrix. And I thought, and yeah, it turns out he used to go to her gigs and record her gigs. You know, then they both go back to the hotel room and listen to it, you know. And in his diaries, he wrote sort of, "Wow, what an amazing night. I got a kiss from Joni. Good night."
That's so hip.
Yeah, that really made me feel good that 2 of my favourite people.
I didn't know that story. Wonderful. That's really, well, it doesn't surprise me in many ways. I'd love to ask her about that. I had the opportunity to interview her a few years ago, and she got ill. And we didn't meet up. But these things, of course, her intersection with so many artists like Miles and Wayne Shorter and Herbie, all those guys. And you know, I thought you'd get a kick out of this when you mentioned Joni and Kate Bush together. I teach music production and songwriting at the university nearby, and in one of both of my courses where I'm dealing with female artists or songwriting, I preface Kate Bush with Joni Mitchell, particularly, and I think if you're a fan, you'll know this tune. Song to Ancient Children's Come from the album Clouds. I think it's from Clouds, and then you can go to anything from Wuthering Heights, or even if you wanted to, from Never Forever. I think that, you look at that world, and Joni sets so much stuff up. The different tunings, all these things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she went, from Court and Spark, Hills of Seven Lawns to the Jaco Pastorius era.
Oh yeah, and then there's the Jaco and Hajira.
Yeah.
That's my shit. Yeah.
I was also, I found out a long time ago that Hendrix and John McLaughlin had jammed as well. So it's sort of this little family of people that I'd love to be with, and they know each other, and it's amazing.
I'm with you 100% on that. Yep, and it is like a family, and I consider Jade Warrior part of that family.
Oh, that's very nice of you. Yeah. Thank you.
Because all of the music that meant so much to me is still with me from an early age to now the age of 57. It inspires me to create my own music and my own form of my own expression. So having you guys out there doing that really did mean a lot to me, continues to mean a lot to me. So I thank you for that. David Duhig. And respect in memory of your brother, Tony Duhig.
Yeah, indeed. Well, thanks very much, Greg. It's been great talking with you.
Oh, man.
I hope I said something interesting somewhere.
This was fantastic. A real blast for me. And you laid out so much information. We really appreciate it. And I know the listeners will appreciate it. Please like us, subscribe to us. We've got more of this kind of stuff coming. We're so honored to have the great David Duhig with us from Jade Warrior. Bye-bye. See you next time.
Hey, take good care. Bye-bye.